welcome to Art Destinations. My name is Sarah Rhodes, an artist based in Lutruwita, Tasmania. In this episode, I am in conversation with Nuvola Ravera about her work made with psychotherapist Laura Castellani, titled If I Cry a Lot, Will the Lagoon Become a Sea? The city of Venice takes on the role as patient in a psychotherapy session. The result is an exhibition of work that portrays Venice as an interconnection of all living and non-living things. Nuvola expresses the body and the soul of Venice through 3D negative glass sculptures, frottages and sound recordings. A transcript between Laura and Nuvola in the psychotherapy sessions are also published. To see examples of some of the work from If I Cry a Lot, Will the Lagoon Become a Sea? Pop over to our Instagram page at artdestinations.podcast. Art Destinations will be published fortnightly, and each season will focus on one place. The first season explores Venice and aims to provide an understanding of the layer tourists rarely see. The second season will focus on Tasmania, and the third, Sicily. Please take a minute to sign up to the email newsletter on the website artdestinations.org and follow this podcast on your hosting platform so you don't miss an episode. In this conversation, Nuvola identifies deep listening as key to her approach and emphasises the importance for her to remain neutral and open when responding to a place. Welcome, Nuvola. It's great to have you on Art Destinations. I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
Thank you too, and thank you to invite me. It's really a pleasure to have this conversation and possibility.
So throughout this podcast, the different artists that I've been interviewing, there's been some common themes that have come through. One is collaboration, which has been a really big theme, and fluid boundaries has been another theme, and people making site-specific work. And it's interesting because this work that I want to talk to you about really touches on all of those three themes. So this is an exciting opportunity to keep unpacking these ideas. Actually, I didn't ask you this question before, but the title, If I Cry a Lot, Will the Lagoon Become a Sea? What does that title mean?
Yes, nice question. This title was the first title that I found for the project that I developed in the 2016 in Venice. After the title change, often I change the title in every place I'm going to work on, even it's the same approach or research. In that case, I was wondering if my tears, the tears of a human body, could change the environment, and if we could have an exchange with the landscape, with the lagoon, which kind of exchange we can have, and if we can influence ourselves in a dialectal changing.
I was looking up the title to see if you'd taken the title from a quote from somewhere, and I couldn't see that you had. But there is a poet called Khalil Gibran. His poem is called The River Cannot Go Back. The river cannot go back, nobody can go back. It's not about disappearing into the ocean, but becoming the ocean. And I just wondered if there was a relationship between his way of thinking about that and yours.
I have to say thank you, Sarah, because it's a good suggestion, the connection between Gibran's vision and my title, my project title. You make me think, just as the river becomes one with the ocean, and human tears highlights the interconnected nature of water and our bodies.
That's lovely. And that the tears are the memories and the experiences that are going into the water, and everybody's got their own experiences. That's very clever.
Yes, it's because I was thinking that our tears are as the rivers. Is crying is one of our ways to water.
So you collaborated with Gestalt psychotherapist Laura Castellani. Well, what was the premise of the work, collaborating with a psychotherapist?
Yes, with this specific psychotherapist, you mean, or just in general?
Both, in general, We'll start with in general.
I had in my experience some therapy that I had for a few years with a psychoanalytic method. But then when I was in Venice and I was looking for someone to collaborate with this specific project, I had just a suggestion from a curator that gave me the name of Laura Castellani. And then I found really interesting the Gestalt therapy because I was thinking it was really resonant with my idea to work on the psychic residue of a city, of the lagoon of Venice. So we discussed the project, and I proposed her to collaborate, and so we decided to work together. Like really, when you go to the psychotherapist and you decide to start a therapy together. So it was a random encounter that then started to be an interesting collaboration. In particular, I found the special potential of Gestalt therapy because, in my opinion, could engage the social and urban change. It focuses on the boundary where the relationships form and evolve. So it was for me really interesting to work with these kind of boundaries and with the possibility to generate ideas and proposal of a mutual change with a conversation with a therapist, but even with the places. So we try to destroy or to discuss the therapy setting and going outside the studio and starting to explore the city, in the street, the lagoon, walking and speaking together, trying to make emerge traces of the lagoon, traces of the places that we were encountering together.
The Gestalt psychotherapy that you said it looks at boundaries. How does it play with the boundaries in psychotherapy?
Yes, I think it's something of to exchange thought, to exchange memories, and the place where we exchange these experiences normally has this studio setting that has a kind of boundary. In that case, we were in the. It was like to be in the house of a patient, in the house of the organism Venice, the subject Venice. And so I was thinking it was an interesting work on boundaries because it was like to try to meet the patient or this subject and this kind of memory of the city in the specific place where the city was living.
Okay. So then, what was the process with you and Laura? How did you do your field work, or how did you do your clinical sessions?
Yes, we started really on the street. We decided to use walking as the first step, and we started to record sound noises from the walking, was like living around us, and we started a conversation, but a strange conversation, I could say, because we were sharing something about ourselves, for sure. But even we try to observe the places, the stones, the squares, everything that was emerging around us. Really sound, people talking, voices, the fluxus of the people, but even of the water, how the water was moving in the canals. So it was like to be really lucid, or try to be really with open eyes all around us, with all our senses. So we try to use all the senses we could use. So we exchange our experiences together. So even the therapist put something of her in our conversation, but we try to record these tracks that we had all around us. This was the first point.
Okay. So at the beginning, there was a little bit about the two of you talking and your response to the place, but then as you tuned in, you were really listening to the physical or the geographic, the natural environment. Is that right? That in the beginning, it would be very hard to separate yourself from the session, but then over time you could take yourself out.
It was an incredible experiment, in fact, because there were moments really personal where we put all our experiences, and then we move out and we try really to start like a silent game and a listen game, like a deep listening session, even without speaking. So we had even this moment, and we in the same time I try to collect some material part of our experience. I mean, I collect this footage. So I search textures, and I had kind of relationships with the textures of the streets, of the stones, of the materials that were in our steps. Even I use three-dimensional negatives with sculpture. So I copied few part of the places. Yeah, so it was I try really to have a complex experience of this kind of meeting and the relationship, to don't use only our sensitive and our speaking. And closing to the session, we collect even a lot of materials. I can say documentation, but it was not really documentation because I took few sample of waters of the canals that started to be sculptured with edible jellies. So it was the kind of process of digestion and of a conversation that created different things and different materials, and yes, and thought about this experience that was really in a multi-level form.
So what was the feeling, like when the final work, what was the feeling that came? Like, how is Venice, this city or this island, and what is it telling the psychotherapists?
I'm not really sure about this because we proceeded step by step, and the psychotherapists in the end made this sound verbatim that are like text where the therapist was speaking about the experience of the meeting with the patient Venice, the patient Lagoon, and she spoke about this meeting, and after this experience emerged a lot of doubt and questioning if Venice, the lagoon, changed after our meeting, if we exchange something or not. So we have experienced the city, in fact, but we don't know if the city experienced us. So it was really like to speak about voices that we collected, tracks, and trying to ask ourselves what these voices could say us, but it's a kind of interpretation, as the therapy meeting is, no? So I don't have a specific answer, but we collect a lot of questions about the patient, the organism that we met, and yes, we hope that we could exchange ourselves in a continuous experience of respect and listening. So this was the end or the starting point of the artwork and the project.
That's a really interesting idea because, I mean, listening essentially in terms of us moving forward as a humankind, listening is really the most important word in my view, that if everybody listened to the world around them and responded, then we'd be in a very good, much better place. So I think that's interesting. And the idea that you wouldn't articulate how you interpreted the city if it was a person is also interesting, because it would be very easy to project, the over-tourism and the climate change and the rising sea levels and the periodic flooding in Venice as this sort of place in distress. But you don't say that. You don't project that onto your exhibition or your work. Or maybe you do and you just haven't said that.
No, I didn't do this because I didn't want to really give voice to the water, to the organism, to Venice and the lagoon, because in fact I could not do it. It was really about a relationship, and to try to create this relationship, and then to bring with to other people, other places, this kind of experience that we had. But I could speak from us, from our point of view. So I could say, okay, I had this experience with the lagoon, and I could bring with me some materials and some tracks of this experience. But I prefer not project kind of interpretation of yes, the mind of Venice, the mind of the lagoon. We encounter for sure the memories and the postures, soundscape, expression, even contradiction, and even traumas. We could say like that. We could find signs of this, but we prefer really to stay on the relationship and not to speak for someone else.
Yeah. But surely you would feel a spirit, like by doing the frottage and by recording the sounds of the water and the air, you would feel a spirit. But are you saying that that's up to the person coming to the exhibition to interpret that? You wouldn't say that because everybody might interpret that spirit differently. The other thing is there's a lot of artists working in Tasmania, for example, or even Australia, and there's this particularly in Tasmania, there's this very particular atmosphere that comes through a lot of people's work. And they are projecting, of course, because it's subjective, but there is a strong kind of feeling that comes through. And they're responding to the place, like they're listening to the place, and that's what the place is telling them, and it's coming through in their work. And it's kind of this dark history, because we have this dark history here, like a genocidal history. So that really comes through in a lot of people's work. There's sort of a blackness of the terrible things that have happened here. And so I was just wondering how it would be possible not for a spirit or an atmosphere not to come through that could be articulated.
Mm-hmm. I think something emerged for sure, but my intent was not to be really clear about my specific point of view interpretation, because I know something about the city. We know something about the histories and even the present moment that the lagoon is living, that is a bit bad, but I wanted in a utopian point of view to make free the lagoon from our actions, from our gestures that we made in history and even in the present moment. It was just a little action to make possible to the city present herself in a way, without reporting what we did to the city.
Why did you choose Venice as the place for this work?
There is a few reasons. The first one was that I was in Venice when I was invited by a curator, Angela Vettese, but it was a teacher too in my course of studies in U of University. So I was living in Venice in that period, and I had a strong experience of Venice in that period, of the place as a living subject. The curator invited us to work on the city of Venice, and I had this kind of epiphany of vision, sleeping close to a canal. I was really tired. It was springtime, and I was sleeping really, really close to a little canal in the Fondamenta degli Incurabili. That is the title of the book too. I don't remember the author, but in that moment, sleeping really in a deep way, I was like dreaming, thinking. It was like a hypnagogic moment, and I felt this strong. I had this strong sensation of a living organism that was breathing with me in that moment. So it was a kind of apparition, vision that I felt in my body. In that springtime, I was reading James Hillman with his book, I think the thought of the heart and the soul of the world. Maybe is this the title? That question the contrast between subject and object in a way. That question the Cartesian dualism to try to return to a stronger relationship between all the organism. And so I think Venice was perfect because I was there in that moment. I was living this strong and deep experience of connection with that water, that place, and even there was an occasion to work on it. So these few reasons make me decide to work really in that sense.
Did you feel, because you were sleeping by the canal, did you feel that you were Venice, that it was sort of becoming part of you?
I didn't become Venice or the water, because it was like we were even before the same thing, the same organism. One time Virginia Woolf wrote that there are tides in the body. And I think the water of Venice is really influencing the tides of the human bodies that are living there. All the bodies are so present and so strong. It gives you the possibility to really feel another kind of material, another kind of subject. And with this project, I was thinking to be and to start to feel as another material, and to imagine if these materials could be like us, like bodies with a kind of thoughts and memories and so on.
Okay, that's really great. I think that's very poetic. So in that case, my next question was how much of yourself was in this work, but I think you've probably almost answered that.
I try to put myself, but even to forget myself. So it was a work of losing the subject of the personal identity to make emerge a collective kind of identity. Even putting myself. So I try to be in the border between me and something other, someone other, someone else.
You're responding to it, so therefore you are in this work. This work is probably just as much about you as it is about Venice, but at the same time you're taking yourself out of it, and so therefore you're probably taking Venice out of it as well.
I try to work doubting about what is me, what is the subject, what is a specific identity and an individual identity, and with a collective identity and the environment and organism place that is breathing with us. So it was the possibility to have a meeting, doubting all the time, and to be often in the border of subject, object, me, you, the lagoon, the water, the stones that created the city as we could see nowadays. So this big scenography, living scenography with all these actors, with these to draw kind of unconsciousness that in a way doesn't separate ourselves. The unconsciousness is the place where we are not separated.
Just speaking about, the fluid boundary that you were talking about just then, I'm interested in the Italian language and how it uses gender to describe land and sea and the relationship between the two.
Yes. For me, it's interesting, this language subjectivation, but in a way, I feel that this element could be without gender, and because they have in common really this boundary. So the interesting thing is this place in between where the land and the sea have a meeting, and that little invisible line that separate is even the place where they have the possibility to have a relationship and to be something other. So it's the creation of another identity that is more interesting, because it is the possibility to put together different voices, different forms and bodies in between. So it's a third subject.
I think that's really interesting, especially in the current way of thinking with how we see gender is increasingly becoming everything's becoming a sort of a non-binary way of looking at the world. We're being asked not to even art practice, really. The idea of each discipline is really sort of being deconstructed, and artists are working across disciplines more than, they always have, but it's even in art schools, it's sort of becoming studio practice rather than specific disciplines. So I think it's interesting that everything is, the shorelines is this beautiful metaphor for how society is increasingly looking at the world.
Yes, it's a possibility to nourish ourselves, not to experience other possibilities to live the world and to interpret the words, because we have so many ways to do it. One is is dangerous, maybe, to be really in one structures that is heavy and not in movement.
Yeah, which leads me to the next part about your practice more broadly. You're always working with different disciplines. And, you worked with a psychotherapist in this project, but you work with lawyers and anthropologists. And you also, in your actual mediums, you're working in sculpture and film, video, photography, drawing. So, you're looking at things from multiple viewpoints all the time. My first thought is, when you're working with someone, you're always going to be an outsider to their discipline, and they're going to be an outsider to your discipline. So how does that collaboration work?
Yeah, it depends really from the occasion and the places and the people that are involved in the project or collaboration. In general, I think to the artistic practice really as a performative way to lose the separation between what someone calls soft and hard sciences. In the past, this boundary between scientists and artists were not really strong. So the training were similar. An artist could be a scientist too. So it's a kind of humanistic approach, not only humanistic but post-human approach to try to discuss the fragility of our convictions and the fragility of our discipline too. Every time I approach to a project, depending really on the place and the situation, I try to understand if I could have a new relationship with someone that could teach me something of new about the topic, about my research too, or about the place. So every time is a kind of new learning and new possibility to discover new forms of studying the world and the places around us. So I don't have a methodology, a specific methodology to work and to collaborate with someone else, but I try to better understand the complexity of a project and of the world that is involving this specific project through meeting, encounters, and even discussion on our really difficult structures that we are involved, because every discipline has chronicle bad habits. So it's a way to try to discuss our bad habits in all our approach and to find even in this case a place in between where we could be more sensitive and open.
To what extent are you collaborating on these projects? Like, for example, with the lawyer or with Laura, the psychotherapist? I mean, you're obviously driving it, but are they equal contributors, or are they just contributing a small amount and sort of using their discipline to guide your practice?
It really depends on the moment and the occasion. With Laura Castellani, we decided to hold session outside the studio as part of a project. She was involved as if she were working with her own practice. Sometimes I seek suggestions and interpretation from other disciplines, yes, and other times collaborators have equal say and involvement in the project. For example, in 2021, in another project that I could say it's the evolution of a project on Venetian Lagoon, we founded a collective in Genova called the Corpi Idrici, or water bodies. We involved architects, biologists, and we include legal experts too. By exploring the complex water system of Genoa, we invited a lawyer to discuss the right of non-human entities, and so together we co-authored a charter of water bodies' rights, maintaining a legal and poetic language too. We were inspired by the French Charter of Rights of Trees and the Charter of Children's Rights. And I like to think that in the environment and places contribute to the project as well as the various disciplines and people that are working together. Really often I expect that the project will evolve significantly from its initial conception.
I guess if the premise of your work is listening, then of course you're going to adapt as it develops. So you said that Venice sort of defined your practice or influenced your practice. We've talked a lot about your practice, but I'm just wondering if you could summarize or conclude how Venice did influence you.
Sure, Sarah. I think summarizing is always a bit tricky, but I try to do it. I'm really sure that Venice had strong influences on me. Just like growing up near water and in nature did when I was a kid. Yes, because in fact I always lived near water. I grew up moving around with my parents in a lot of anarchist communities along the coast of France, Spain, and Italy, in Genova. And all the time we were lived around water, and water was around us. Then Venice is one of the places where I stayed more time as an adult. And it's a really place that I dreamed a lot before I actually went there. I could say that lagoon with her special still water and murky waters had a strong power on me. Remind me of the unconsciousness mind. And after experience Venice with her ghosts, I started developing what I could call my current artistic practice. In fact, after the psychotherapy of Lagoon, I continued using this same approach, a bit different for sure, but in other places. I have to say that sensing the lagoon as a living organism profoundly reminded me something that came from my childhood that had been lost in my memory. Maybe you have this experience of animistic approach when you are a child, this sensation that often we have when we can feel object and materials as living friends. So, yes, I really can say that my work reborn in Venice through all this experience and make me more aware of everything around me, not just people, but all parts of the environment that are co-living with us.
So I was just thinking, Nuvola, it would be quite fun to have a little word game. And if I said a word to you, you could say a word, the first word that came into your mind. And I have a little list of words that I thought you might respond to. So do you want to have a little play?
Yes, that's cool. That's fantastic. Try.
Okay. Water.
Texture.
Reverberate.
Glitter.
Sustain.
Invisible.
Give.
Structure.
Isolate.
Appears.
Connect.
Speaking.
Conceal.
Time.
Engulf.
Organs.
Swallow.
Protection.
Hold.
Sand.
Suffocate.
Snorkels.
Island.
Humanity.
Belonging.
Leaves.
Mediate.
Remedy.
And last one, meditate.
Brief.
Brief. Okay, that was fun. It was so interesting because all of those answers were surprising, so I really like that.
It's a chaotic, it's like a cadavere squisito, this Dadaistic game that create a figure with pieces of drawing of different people, but covering your part, my part, and the part of the others.
I don't know that game. I'll have to look that up. That's cute. Okay, Nuvola, thank you so much for taking the time to meet with us. It was really interesting and such a poetic practice. I really enjoy listening to you.
Thanks, you too. And it was super interesting to try to answer to your question. And thank you, really, because you make me think about my work in a different way. So really, thanks.
No, that's sweet. Thank you. Thank you for listening to the 6th episode of Art Destinations. Next, we will be in conversation with photographic artist David Degano on what it means to be Italian. Please subscribe to Art Destinations wherever you find your podcasts and sign up to our newsletter on our website, artdestinations.org, as we send out fortnightly newsletters promoting the next episode. I am your host, Sarah Rhodes. Ciao for now.